way up. W's as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going on track, now we going way up. Way up. Now we going way up. Now we going. Keep the same energy. Work on being better when I'm 70. Your drip is just a water spring. You know I drip different, this is 7 C's. I deal with life different, make that lemon squeeze.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Edge. I'm Trey Griggs, your host, and we're so excited that you are here with us today. The Edge is sponsored by the Manair Group. We want to say thanks to them, our good friend Wasim Manair. If you haven't checked them out, make sure you do so at ManairGroup.com. Supply chain and recruiting simplified. All right, we've got a great show for you today. If you've missed any of the past shows, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can hear any of those episodes, watch those episodes. We've had some great guests on. We've had Weather Optics, and last month we had Optimal Dynamics. We've had Highway on, green screens, and so many great groups. Open Doc's been on as well. So make sure you check out those past episodes. Today we got a great episode for you, and so I'm excited to bring on our guests. We usually do things differently. If you know, in the past we've done some things a little bit differently, where I just give you some tech news. But today we're going to bring this guy on right away. My good friend from Minnesota area, coming to us from Navix, the president and co-founder. Give it up for Eric Krueger in the house.
Oh yeah.
What's up, brother? How are you? We need to let this play
good,
for just
man.
a
How are
minute.
you?
Just a minute. We got to play this for just a minute. Let it run
I
out.
was gonna say, I shouldn't be talking over this song right now. We should just sit back and relax.
Going to give this its due attention. Well, while we're waiting for this to crank up, let me ask you a question. Do you like the coffee mug or the water bottle? Which one do you want?
Oh, definitely the coffee mug.
Coffee mug coming your way, man. We're going to send that to you. We appreciate you being on the show
Sounds
today,
good.
man. That's great. I know we gotta let this song just play out a little bit. So, it's so good. AC/DC, man. That's class. Have you seen them live in concert? Been to a
I have
concert?
never seen them live in concert, but I would totally be open to it.
Man, some of those old rockers,
even at the age that they're at, I still think it'd just be legendary. So
That's right. Yeah, them old rockers, man, they can definitely get at it. That's for sure. Okay, so we're going to keep this playing while we talk a little bit about tech news. All right. So in past episodes, as you may have seen, we have talked a little about tech news, but I've been doing it myself, and I'm not really a solo kind of a guy. I'm really a group kind of a guy. I need to talk to somebody about this. So I'm going to pull up a couple of headlines. First of all, we got the Freightways Top 100 Tech nominations are due now. That's coming up. Were you guys on that last year? I can't remember. Remind me.
actually, we weren't. We were so net new to the market. I don't think many people knew about us at that point. So, I mean, if we had any nominations, it might have been one or two. But I definitely have. It's coming up here. I think the nominations for the top 100 are here through the end of the month, and we've seen a number of those come through from our side, as I'm the main point of contact. That luckily get to see those when they're submitted.
Nice.
So I don't get to see what people say about us, but at least I see that we were nominated. So
well, we'll see what happens. We'll see if you guys crack the top 100 this year, which is exciting. See if somebody can knock P44 off the perch. They've been number one like the last 4 years on this thing. Maybe since its inception. I don't know. They've been up there for a while. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's coming up. Speaking of Freightwaves, we've got F3 in November. We got Technovations, October 18th through 20. Are you guys going to that show?
Yes, we're going to be we are a showcase sponsor at Technovations, so we'll be actually on stage as well, speaking to.
Whoa, are you guys in the? Hold on, you're a showcase sponsor. Are you in the competition?
We are not in the Shark Tank competition. We are just a showcase sponsor, so we are participating on stage with 7-minute session, speaking to the value our solutions providing to the marketplace. And then we're also attending F3 in Chattanooga. So we'll be down there. And I believe we also have a fireside chat there lined up as well. So
very cool.
Very much looking forward to those. And it's every one of those in-person events, it's just so fun to get together with people and speak to something that everyone knows is such a big challenge, but and when you're solving it a little bit differently, it's always hard to sometimes articulate what it is until you get to sit down and discuss it face to face.
Well, we're going to do that today for sure. But it's trade show season coming up. I know my schedule is about to get a little crazy. I'm sure yours is as well. It tends to be September and October every year. So it'll be fun to see you guys out on the road. That's for sure. All right, let's get into a couple of headlines. So I don't know if you realize this, but the CHIPS Act anniversary, a lot of lawmakers in D.C. are touting this $320 billion infusion, I believe, into supply chain connectivity. we'll see how it goes. We just got reports that United States Postal Service is not even automate, like they're not, automating their processes well enough and maximizing what they can do. I don't know if you heard any of those stories. What are your thoughts about the government involved in automation? Do you think this is a waste of money? Do you think it's going to be put to good use? What are your thoughts?
I would say that the innovation should be happening anyways. No matter where the funds are coming from, I think it's going to level up everyone in the industry. It doesn't matter, again, if it's government or if it's private or not. We've seen a lot of, over the last, I'd say 5-6 years, massive infusions into the freight tech industry itself. So I think it all will help for the better. Whether or not I think it's the government that should be doing it, I think we could have that as another conversation.
It's weird because some things the government has done, specifically the military, has led innovation, like
Correct.
the internet,
Absolutely.
certain things like that. Like there's certain innovations that the government's done a really good job. And there's other things where you're like, please don't touch that. please don't touch that. So we'll see what happens with that. Also got news that Rod Storn has been installed as the new chief people and culture officer over at Truck Stop. They've been making some changes lately over there at Truck Stop. We'll see what's happening, some acquisitions. So we'll see what happens with that. It's got to be difficult for legacy tech companies to change. I think that's got to be just difficult overall, just to make changes, to adopt new technologies, to advance in new ways. It's got to be tough. We'll see what happens with that over at Truck Stop, our friends over there. And finally, last one before we jump into what you're doing at Navix. I saw this today. This is really encouraging. A couple of former Yellow Logistics employees, Steve McCleary and Ryan Stroop, have opened up a new Radiant Logistics office in Overland Park, Kansas. Man, I hope that some of those people who were affected by the Yellow situation start new ventures, become entrepreneurs, create new stuff in the marketplace. We'll see what happens, but kudos to those guys, and we'll see who else comes out of that, starting something new. But man, that's always tough, right? Sometimes the market forces you into doing stuff that maybe you've thought about doing and weren't ready for. And here you go.
Yeah, maybe,
jump in.
It increases, it takes you away maybe from that specific comfort level you were riding on forever. And I think it's the best time ever for people to go out and venture and determine if there's something else that they want to be pursuing. So
yeah,
I think,
exactly.
Although unfortunate, it sometimes opens some net new opportunities for a lot of people.
I think it's your approach. Sometimes, if you look at those things positively, sometimes those are the best things that happen in your life. You look back and go, man, I wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened. I'd have just been kind of staying where I was and comfortable, in more comfort.
I've heard that a lot from even my own peer group, right? And some of the most unfortunate things that have happened associated with their career have led to some of the best and biggest blessings that they've had too. Yeah. So,
I hope it's with technology innovation as well, because we need people who think, about technology to go out there and start building stuff. Like, I think oftentimes of my good friend Tom Curry over at Kingsgate, who stepped out of that to start Qt, and we'll see what he creates, but I have a feeling he's going to do a pretty good job. So
absolutely,
a lot of good stuff with that. All right, well, that's it for the tech news for today. We got to jump in and talk about your story and what's going on at Navix. So first of all, Eric, talk a little bit about your background story that led you to getting involved here at Navix as a co-founder and the president.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think, it's kind of an interesting journey as to where and or how I got involved with Navix, but I think it's kind of a perfect, perfect story and perfect background as to really what's kind of accumulated thus far with what we've built. So, I spent 15 plus years now in SaaS technology in a number of different realms, primarily focused around go-to-market, and whether that be doing that independently, building that out, and or building net new teams to go pursue a net new market for a business, or even another startup for that matter. It's always been in supply chain, right? And how to create connectivity and efficiency and reduce friction throughout these networks of the supply chain. And this is actually really the first stab 100% into logistics and transportation. I spent a number of years actually building out a go-to-market tied to Oracle OTM and utilizing EDI connectivity there. So I obviously have a number of experiences specific with logistics and transportation, but this was the first opportunity that presented itself to go head first into this type of space. And that was in due part because I had a number of connections that I had learned and friends that I created out or throughout the years of my own career. And when the timing was right, when they kind of thought that they were onto something around an idea, they asked me to come in and lend a perspective from a SaaS technology background. And luckily, as we went down that journey, it just panned out that it was a really good fit for both. And therefore, that's really kind of where Navix was started. It was partly ideation that was happening internally at a 3PL, and at the same time, it was how do we possibly think about this as a SaaS technology versus a proprietary technology, and is this a challenge that exists throughout the marketplace that's not just siloed to one individual, and how can we solve this more holistically across the industry rather than specific to one company?
Yeah, and I'm excited about your background story, having not necessarily deep roots in logistics, but having some roots in logistics, because that means that you're bringing technology outside of the industry into the industry, which I think we need. I think guys like Chad Olson at AVRL is doing the same type of a thing.
Yep.
It's really powerful to bring those things that are working elsewhere and bring them into our industry and just bring us up to speed, I think, a little bit faster by doing that. So I'm excited.
Exactly. And, I'd say, Trey, just to jump in there, we structure our team that way as well, right? We have a massive amount of subject matter expertise, and we have pulled people internally that know this space extremely well, while mixing that with talent that has come from outside the industry to really kind of foster that ideation across the organization, to ensure that we're solving the problem in the best possible way, rather than maybe what has been done previously. So I think that's
also guys who like to play golf, which, kudos to you on that. You got to get some good golfers.
Actually, across our 17 US based employees, I think actually we have less golfers than you would think associated with that group.
But you got a couple who like it, and that's all that matters.
Well, we have a couple, yeah.
And the ones who are out there.
You gotta have the one that's the near scratch golfer that just puts everyone to shame. But
yeah,
you can still enjoy it.
You were kind enough to let me participate in the event up in Cleveland before Future Supply Chain back in June, and we had a great time. And I saw some guys that could hit the ball pretty well, so it was pretty fun.
Well, you weren't on my team.
I was not on your team. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Played with the guys from Best Bay. It was fun. All right, so let's jump in and talk about Navix for a minute. If somebody were to say, Eric, what problem is Navix solving? How do you answer that?
Yeah, I'd say the problem that we're solving is, when you look at a brokerage or a 3PL, cash is king, and cash flow is more important than anything. It's the lifeblood of any brokerage. And the problem we are solving for is helping our customers increase and basically lessen the time it takes to convert that cash. So how can we increase that cash flow for a brokerage or a 3PL, and how can we speed up that cash conversion cycle altogether? The function of that, though, is by performing that via back office automation, automated document retrieval, automated dispute resolution, processing bills that much more quickly, to where they are able to get that out accurately and timely to their customers and their shippers, as well as how do you increase quick pay revenue and offer that type of service to your carrier network. So what we're solving for, though, is primarily how do we, across this entire network and ecosystem, get cash to move more or frictionlessly from the shipper to the intermediary all the way to the carrier.
Yeah, so speeding up the transfer of cash, decreasing that aging process of invoices that go into 60 days, 90 days and beyond, so that brokers can have the cash then pay the carriers on time and keep everything moving. So it's kind of greasing the skids, if you will, of cash flow.
Exactly. And there are a lot of other ancillary benefits associated with that process. And if you speed up certain aspects of that, right, you're going to have greater audit savings in general, right, that you'd find, or maybe larger discrepancies that you weren't able to find in the past, or maybe you're fixed something upstream, right? So maybe it's a problem you have in the tendering process or with a shipper, where maybe they're sending in the wrong DIMS or the wrong class or something along those lines. If we're able to identify that and provide the information and the data to back that up and the insights, we can then, ultimately help streamline that entire process from when the load was originated all the way through that entire ecosystem.
Yeah, and this is one reason why I wanted to have you guys on the show, because I think behind fraud, which is a big problem in the industry right now, this is number two, which is cash, and understanding just the cash flow conversion. I talked to a lot of brokers, and a lot of them are relying on factoring more because they just don't have the capital, which means they're paying more fees now to have money, as opposed to just getting the money from their customer in a timely manner. And I was amazed in talking to some brokers how many invoices just sit because the documentation wasn't correct. It just sits there and nobody's really bringing it to, I mean, the shipper's not going to bring it up because they don't have to pay for it.
No, they don't want
to. Right. But I'm just amazed at how many invoices aren't correct. It's amazing.
I think on average industry across, all modes, I think it's sitting around that 20 to 25% of every freight bill has some sort of discrepancy, or needs some sort of resolution. And so we're not talking about the ones that pass with flying colors and get processed all the way through. And,
Right.
Obviously there's some benefit there and some areas that you can speed up there, but really it's that 20 to 25% exception rate are the ones that are creating that, hey, it's taking me 8 days to bill my customer post delivery, or it's taking me, with some customers we've talked to, it's taking them 22 days, post delivery to bill their customer because they don't have enough bandwidth. They don't have enough, what currently today, a lot of it's done with people. And so they don't have a better solution to resolve discrepancies quickly to get that invoice out to the customer, thus impacting cash flow.
Yeah, and if 25% of your customers are not paying on time and your margins are only 10 to 12% or 15%, you are negative right away. I mean, you're already negative just in getting the cash that you need just to pay the bills and keep the lights on, that type of thing. And so I do think it's a big problem. And there's really only two ways to handle this problem. You can either throw more people at it, which is I think what has historically been done, is they just add people to the accounting department or to the billing department, whatever you want to call it, or you start to use some automation. So talk a little bit about how Navix differs from what's out there today. Clearly, people who are throwing people at the problem, that's one way to do it. But it's a scalable problem where you have to keep adding people as you add loads. Talk about how Navix is different from that and from what is out there in the marketplace today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think, where to start is a lot of companies and a lot of the incumbents in the space have become really good at, I collect the document, I can classify the document, I can read the characters or the fields off of each document type. But where they kind of end is then what happens when something doesn't match, right? So, okay, great. I got this in, I'm missing a POD, or maybe I needed to validate the signature on the POD in order to bill my customer. A lot of these solutions don't have a process in place for that exception management piece. And what then happens next? And so, that's where I'd say Navix excels above and beyond any of the other solutions in the marketplace. Is we take it that 2 to 3 steps further in the process and that workflow to, one, identify specifically by customer, by carrier, by mode specific business rules. Why is this bill suspended in the first place, and actually showing a user as to why it's there, rather than just saying it's outside of a tolerance of plus or minus 25. And then we are able to drive automated resolution off of that, right? So now take it that it's no longer a human having to be involved because we recognize that a POD is missing. Well, why can't a platform, why can't a system automatically start notifying that party that we're missing a specific type of backup that we know is required for that load for that customer? That should be handled via a solution or a technology automation process, rather than today. I would say 90% of the companies that we talk to, if they're missing backup or if there's a discrepancy, it gets kicked out, and it literally is someone going into Outlook and sending a notification to the carrier,
sending an email,
a specified cadence to track this down. And that's just for missing backup. Well, what happens when the rate's wrong? Or what happens if you have contracted rates and now you're trying to figure out where the discrepancy actually exists across rates? How do you drive resolution there quickly, right? Versus just kicking it over the fence to the carrier or the vendor to drive to, through their process. Is there a more streamlined approach to driving resolution that can drive quicker resolution, therefore ultimately getting that bill out to the shipper that much sooner, right?
Yeah,
so that's where Navix has taken it that one step further beyond the typical, what most would say, computer vision, OCR, IDP process, and doing really well there and doing some automation associated with that, to how do we leverage the discrepancy management and the workflow management post, leveraging AI to possibly solve that with a technology rather than a human having to intervene.
Yeah, this is where AI is making a big difference in decision automation. Like what needs to happen now? So here's the outlook, here's what's happening, but what do we do now? And so it sounds like you're saying the platform is able to send that email out saying we need this POD for this load, or to send out and say the rate confirmation was for $2,450, your invoice was for $2,600 or whatever it might be. So like it's able to take those discrepancies, those challenges, and then make a decision to send out a notification or to take a step to eradicate the problem.
Correct. And a lot of times we also not only see this just specific to the carrier or the vendor community, right? This is now there's so many times we see exceptions that are specific to the brokerage itself, right? Where maybe we need to go communicate via TMS with the load rep that, was there something that was pre-negotiated or negotiated outside of what's represented on the order within the TMS, and get approval that way as well. It's not just carrier specific, right? This touches the brokerage, it touches shipper approval, it touches carrier approval. So there's a lot of different ways, and the best way to do this is thinking about this as more of a communication and workflow platform that leverages AI where necessary or where it can, to drive that resolution quicker.
Yeah, and freight audit has been in the LTL side of the industry for a while because of just the discrepancies with that. But there really hasn't been a platform or a system or technology company that's tackled the truckload side of it, which is where you guys are specializing. Are you doing LTL as well? Just truckload, a little bit of both?
We're in all modes other than parcel. I'd say the one thing that is kind of differentiating from the traditional, I guess, what most people would think freight audit and pay is, a lot of times that just gets sent over, and it's generally a gain share model where it's, if I find a discrepancy and I can get this driven towards resolution, I get a rev share or a split of what I found. Where our model is more about it's better for all parties involved to have the accurate and the right rate, no matter how it's impacting the other. It's more about speed, right? So as long as it's accurate, how quickly can we drive this towards resolution and get everyone on the same page, and then get it processed for billing out to the shipper, and then also out, obviously payment out to the vendor.
Yeah.
I think too often people think about it siloed, and they think only about it as an AP issue. When you really look at brokerages and 3PLs, they have to compare this to the AR side of their business as well. It's not just an AP problem. It's then if I accept a specific type of accessorial that maybe came in on the vendor bill or the carrier bill that was correct, how do I pass that charge back on to the customer, and how do I reconcile that? And that's also another part of this that too often I think people think of it as, I'm just solving freight audit for you and your bills between you and the carrier. And that I think is sometimes a little bit tunnel vision and a little bit siloed approach to solving this across the board.
Yeah, and there's always, I think, the danger, the risk that you're going to get pigeonholed as a technology into just the freight audit side of things, and not really customers and prospects aren't going to understand the breadth and the scope of what you guys are doing within that whole process. So it's kind of creating a new category in some aspects around that, which is cool. Okay, all right, Eric, listen, the proof is in the pudding. Does this thing actually work? What results are customers experiencing? Hey, what's up, Wasim? Good to see you, my friend. Speaking of golfer, that guy likes to play golf too. He's a little addicted to the game, as the rest of us are. Good to see you, my friend. All right, what results are customers experiencing from this so far? What are you seeing so far? I know it's still new, but what are you seeing so far?
Yeah, so I'd say that, there are really kind of three pillars of value that our customers are receiving, and I'd say the first is what we talked about earlier on, right? It's cash flow and cash conversion. We're seeing customers be able to reduce their DSO, by at least 3+ days. And when you talk about, and I'll show you an example of this, we utilize a DSO calculator as part of proving our value. When we talk about reducing DSO by even just 3 days, for a lot of these brokerages that are moving millions of dollars of revenue, that's not chump change in terms of how that impacts the business and how they can reinvest that working capital into other areas that will help them, whether it be grow on the sales side, other technology investments, or other initiatives that they're pursuing. So I'd say the biggest thing is that cash flow, and we have 3 days plus reduction in DSO is a massive number, and we'll quantify that here a little bit later on. The second is efficiency. We have customers that have gone 7x in volume, and they've had to add 0 headcount associated with their back office.
That's
process.
huge. That's huge.
I mean, 7x. So they started with us processing, about 1,000 loads a month, and now they're up to 7,000 loads a month, and they've not needed to add a single person tied to document retrieval, billing, audit, or any of the other processing associated with this entire end-to-end solution. So that's obviously a huge efficiency gain there.
Let me pause you on that real quick. So keep your last one there. How much more growth could they anticipate experiencing without? At some point, you probably need to hire somebody to keep track of some of the stuff, or just keep a pulse on it. Could they double it? Could they go to 14x? What could they do? What's possible? Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. So we actually have kind of two business models that we offer, and one would be where you license the software and the application itself, and it's your people in creating some of the workflows and or processing the bills that are exception within the platform. The other offering that we have we refer to it as Navix Plus, and that's where we also have a services layer that we can, or a human in the loop that we can offer on top of the platform. Because if the platform is telling the user exactly why the bill is suspended and tells them what the resolution should be, it doesn't really necessarily require someone with subject matter expertise to drive resolution with that bill. So in the latter, the Navix Plus version, right, they could scale. They could be doing 30,000 loads a month, and they might need 1 or 2 people on their end that are liaisons for Navix to be able to ensure that we are, managing business rules and or updating where necessary, tied to customer and or vendor inquiries, and or maybe we need something resubmitted or recreated on a load in the first place. Well, sometimes we do need that liaison from the business perspective to process that, but they're not in the day-to-day of processing the bills. On the Navix application only, we've seen where most of our customers have seen about a 70 to 80% headcount reallocation associated with that process because of the efficiencies gained. And so that is, maybe I put more people in collections, or maybe I put more people in other more business value-added areas of my for the business, rather than comparing PDFs side by side, sending emails to track down missing backup, or going to carrier portals to file disputes, right? So those are generally, I would say, the efficiencies that we've seen across the board with our customers. Is for the application only is 70+% reduction in people and or time needed to process bills. And for the Navix Plus, obviously that's pretty much zero, right? They don't need a single person associated with that process, and they could scale from 1,000 loads to 20,000 loads a month, and they'd see that greater efficiency of scale.
Cool. So 7x without adding people, that's impressive. So you're saying you have a software, and you have a software plus version that you offer.
Yep.
And so that's awesome. So let's keep going. So you had cash conversion, you had efficiency. What's the third value that you're seeing with customers?
The third value is just additional savings altogether and findings. A lot of companies have their thresholds set at specific dollar amounts because they don't have the bandwidth to process the bills at a lower threshold. So let's say I'm identifying more discrepancies, more disputes. I might just have leakage in general associated with those bills that are below $25, assuming 10% of those bills are actually, let's say, at $20. Well, guess what? Passes the threshold, but no one still looks at it. Therefore, I'm still just leaking cash.
Right. You're just paying $20 just to not have to deal with it.
Correct. And so with our platform, a lot of our companies have opted they start then auditing down to the penny level, right? And getting to that point of where, because of the added efficiency with the automation and the workflow, they have been able to go to a lower threshold of what is deemed necessary to audit. Therefore, they found additional savings, whether that be tied to fuel, right? We see a lot of fuel surcharge discrepancies where they don't even realize that something has changed associated with the fuel surcharge rate. And they're saving, now hundreds of thousands of dollars because they were wrong on fuel altogether when they were creating their rate con or their bill of lading. We've seen it where we're identifying additional accessorials. Maybe they aren't passing that charge of an accessorial that they absorb from a carrier onto their customer. There are a lot of different areas that we see now just by having a more granular and more thorough audit that doesn't impact the ability to process bills in a timely manner, right?
So to put that in perspective, today, I think I'm going to make $400 on a load, but because of the discrepancy, I'm only going to make $375 because I just can't deal with anything that's under $25. But with Navix, I can go to I'm going to make at least $398 or $399 because my discrepancy is 50 cents instead of $25, and I can still process those because of the scale of the automation within the platform.
Yep, exactly, and all three of these pillars then have an impact on one, how are you perceived by your customers? Every customer, any shipper hates a rebill, and going through that entire process. And if you're on top of your,
you mean they don't want to do the work twice, Eric? Is that what you're saying? They don't want to...
Yeah, you're right. If you're on top of your stuff, guess what? Your customers are going to appreciate that, and you're going to gain greater customer retention there. And then the same goes for carriers. We work with a number of the LTL carriers that are so happy that Navix is involved in the process, because they then receive the benefit where they don't have their own teams tracking down, chasing down, determining whether or not a dispute is relevant or not. They're able to process that much quicker with Navix, and in turn get paid quicker, right? So therefore it directly impacts them. And you know what, you want to talk about increasing your negotiation leverage with carriers, and or even getting greater capacity or availability. It's all because you're doing well in these other areas, that it can enable some of those other screws to be turned, tied to, you know, where they're willing to meet you in the middle a little bit more, tied to some of the discrepancies and driving resolution there. So
yeah, I can see the value on both sides of it, that a customer would appreciate it, and then a carrier can get paid faster and get that track record going, and a broker gets a better brand, a better reputation as a result of that.
Exactly.
So that's awesome. Well, let's listen to what some of your customers have to say about the product. We have a quick testimonial from Brian Hastings over at Veritas Logistics. Let's check that out real quick.
So we were managing, processing, sorting invoices, making sure that, you know, each document was being attached to each separate load, invoicing different customers and having to, you know, pay carriers and getting that order. You know, me and my partner, we were processing these invoices and putting them in the system. And hell, at that time, it was a 2 to 3 hour day thing. Now we can go out, we can, you know, prospect those shippers. We can actually spend time, you know, trying to develop new business, as well as coaching our people to do the same thing. Onboarding process was phenomenal. One of the members there on the team, his name's Will Kratz. I don't know if you've met Will yet, but dude's phenomenal. We did like a 45-minute recorded video session. I was able to walk him through the entire process of what we did. Went in and created a customized workflow, and he was able to go in and literally do it. He's like, "Hey man, I think I got everything." This was like day 5, and I'm like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, I think I got everything." And then, so like, I kind of hands off a little bit. I would go in and kind of monitor it and audit it just a little bit. But, you know, 5 days into signing up for the service, Will was literally processing everything in it.
All right, listen, I've sold technology before, Eric. Very rarely is somebody up and running within 5 days. I think Will earns a raise right there. He got a shout out in the testimonial. Will, if you're watching, man, good job.
He gets a shout out from every single one of our customers. You know, obviously he's leading currently all of our implementations, and he's phenomenal. And he comes from, you know, he spent 25 years in a number of different areas within a few different brokerages, and you know, he spent time in carrier compliance and the audit and bill processing, and he is, I mean, just phenomenal. So I couldn't shout him out enough. And it's just great when a customer says it as well.
Yeah,
So.
Travis says Will's the man. I'll tell you, as a salesperson, when you have a great onboarding specialist, changes the game. You know, your customers are going to be taken care of. So when Brian said 5 days, I actually asked him, because I got through that interview with him. I asked him, I said, 5 days? I said, he goes, 5 days. You were seeing results right away, and I was taking things off my plate. I was like, 5 days. That's incredible.
They were in a really unique spot. So they were actually in the middle of a transition between TMSs, and so they were.
It's the perfect time to implement new technology.
Exactly, and so it was for us. It was hey, like, it's not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze to go and build and integrate to the TMS that you're sunsetting. Let's just start building towards the TMS that you're moving towards, and create the integration there. And so in that model, they, you know, the way Veritas Logistics utilizes Navix is what we refer to as our Navix Plus model. And so we were able to enable our people to come in and start helping just process bills that quickly, while we were ingesting the documents, classifying the document, doing all the things that we needed to do. We then, you know, just didn't have that direct integration built at that time until they transitioned fully to that TMS. And now, obviously, that process is fully automated. But for them, they were able to receive the value that quickly, right? We were able to help them start assisting with that speed and accuracy and processing bills as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So I don't know if we want to throw it out there, but the expectation is 5 days we'll have something in our playbook. Maybe longer than that. Well, I mean, Will's an amazing guy, but there's only one of him, so who knows? But certainly, I was impressed when I heard that, and kudos to the team on getting that done, which is good. All right, so we want to see how the product works. Can we get a quick little run through of the system and how it works? I'm gonna go ahead and share our screen real quick. Here we go. Let's talk us through it. You're running now. You got the controls.
All right. So I think this is the best place to start. It kind of shows end to end where Navix is involved in this entire process, and allows us to speak to, just some of the different areas that Navix has the ability to touch. And then we'll dive into the demo itself and actually show you the user interface of what the platform looks like and how individuals would be alerted and or process bills that have an exception. So, this all starts with, you got to receive the information somewhere. So we need the order data out of the TMS that we're matching to, or generally matching to. Sometimes, in some instances, there isn't order data that's available for us to pull. Therefore, we might have a mismatch there associated with not being able to match a bill associated with an order. But we then are agnostic in our vendor ingestion and document ingestion. So whether that be 210 EDI coming in, or whether that be API access to bills and or backup, or it's coming in via PDF attached to an email, right? So we have the ability to ingest any and all forms of data coming in from that vendor community or carrier community. With that, obviously, we classify each page of those PDF packets. We take the relevant data off of each doc type. We have confidence intervals tied to field level validation. And then we also have the double keying and or the, where necessary, kind of human in the loop associated with, this is an illegible document. This needs to, we need to make a request back to the carrier, which is then ultimately driven by the automation within the audit platform itself. Once that data is in the platform, we do an import and data validation. So we match it against the customer, we match it against the carrier, we match it then against the load itself that was created in the TMS. If none is existing, we then would either prompt to create the load because it is relevant, or it is not. We do all the duplicate management here in this process. We then run every single bill through a set of business rules that are highly configurable by customer, by mode, by carrier. Maybe it's contingent.
That's Will figuring this process out, right? That's with working with the customer.
Yes. And so we map out all of the SOPs associated with each individual customer, each mode, each unique scenario. Are there specific instances where maybe this customer requires you actually validating that there is the signature on the POD, where this customer doesn't necessarily care? They just need a copy of the POD. Well, in all of those different instances, that's a highly configurable business rules engine that then is also pinging a rating engine, right? So if you have contracts, if you have other rates that are specific to customer, or maybe that are negotiated on your own behalf, we have the ability to re-rate every single one of these shipments and also compare what was billed to then what should have been charged per contract. So we have the ability to very quickly and easily identify where discrepancies exist by looking at a three-way match at a line item level. If an exception is found, obviously that then gets kicked out, and it is telling the user and or the analyst exactly why that bill is there. So this is because we have an accessorial of $35 for liftgate that came on the vendor bill. It was not on the original order, but per contract, actually liftgate should have been charged for $25 instead of $35. Well, that's still a discrepancy, right? So it's not just a discrepancy that there's a liftgate, it's a discrepancy that it doesn't also match contract. So then we drive that through a workflow with dispute resolution that can be automated based off of the exception type or the rule that the customer configures. And then that goes out, and once finalized and approved and validated, whether that be through the broker directly or through the carrier community, you then, obviously we drive that towards resolution as quickly as possible. We pass that information back to the TMS for billing and or payment. If everything, matches and meets the requirements, there's no human involved. It literally passes through with flying colors because it met all of the business rules and requirements. Then that speeds up that entire process to get that back into the TMS. We flagged it in the TMS that bill is ready to be approved. and or billed to the customer, and or that it's also ready to be paid to the carrier or offer quick pay. And in some cases, this is a turnaround that's a matter of hours. And other times as something gets flagged for dispute, sometimes we are waiting on some external parties to resolve that. But it's all about how do you automate that notification that something still exists and how it's impacting the business.
Yeah, so let me pause you for a second. So really, in this process that you're just showing right here, there's two places I see where there's a massive potential for time savings. The business rules to get things through that are good, but then that dispute resolution, that's where the platform can send an email to the right person, the right party, notifying them of a problem. Does that email include the ability for them to then take action? Like what when they get that email, can they do something? Can they click a button? Does it bring them into the system? I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I'm curious, what does that look like on the user end for the carrier or for the broker when one of these emails goes out, these notifications?
Yeah, so no, that's a great question. So let's say the email goes out or other notification type goes out, right? It's configurable to by our customer. It could be an email, it could be an SMS, it could be leveraging a text partner like a text locate or a vendor flow, where maybe they already have that set up with their carrier network. And why wouldn't we try and touch the carrier in as many ways as possible to drive this towards resolution?
Or their preferred way. Like,
yes, I get a
text message, so again, I respond to that last agnostic email.
Yeah, it's kind of this agnostic approach. And so when we send that out, that email is configured by each of our tenants or each of our customers to where we allow and or mention how that carrier can then resubmit and or send in that missing backup or actually respond to that dispute, whether that be responding directly to the email, whether that be a link where they can upload, whether that be an app that maybe the tenant already utilizes, or maybe that carrier already utilizes a specific trucking app. Or whether that be a text service, right? To us, it doesn't matter. That goes back to that agnostic ingestion. Our goal is how do we speed this process up and make it frictionless for a party to communicate how to drive resolution in this entire process. The carriers want to get paid. We're not going to force them down some specific way in which they have to do this. That's not going to speed this process up. You have to come and meet the carrier where necessary to allow them to do this with the greatest ease of use, right? And so that's how we would handle that process from a dispute resolution perspective.
So if you're used to texting a carrier, for example, you can set it up to send out a text message. But I mean, you work with hundreds of carriers. Does it customize it down to each carrier, or is it like, hey, if it's a carrier, we're going to text them first, or we're going to send a bunch of different, like how does it know what to do in that situation?
So it really is tenant by tenant specific. So we would work with our tenant, and our tenant is our customer, through implementation as to how they're currently communicating and how they're currently collecting documentation from their carrier community. And in that process, we would identify how and what are the best and easiest ways for us to piggyback off of that communication. So as soon as we identify that there is a discrepancy or we are missing backup, where do we have to trigger that notification back out to the carrier, and or what is the best way to communicate that? Sometimes the TMS has the functionality to upload that documentation via a link. Well, as soon as that documentation comes in via that link, they still route that to Navix to go through this entire workflow and process again from beginning to end, right? Because we need to validate that, one, they actually sent in the correct. How many times have you seen a carrier, when you ask them specifically to send in a POD, that is the only document that they send in?
Yeah.
It's likely zero, right? Usually they send in the entire packet all again, and it includes your rate con, it includes your bill, it includes
it's easier to do it that way, especially if it's electronic. They'll just send the whole thing.
Yeah, yes. Right. So and how do you know that POD is actually correlated to that order, right? And so you still need those extra steps of validation and then that parsing, which is why we still have everything then that's routed back through the Navix application to ensure that when we say that this bill is ready to be billed to the customer and or paid to the carrier, it's gone through all these additional validation steps, but you're not sacrificing the speed. You're actually improving the speed to do so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's fascinating to think about that. All right, Eric, we got to pause for a second. We're going to come back to the demo in just a minute. All right, we got to pay the bills around here. Certainly want to give a little highlight out to our good friend Wasim Maner over at the Maner Group. Just a reminder, everybody, if you're looking for great talent, needing some help, make sure you reach out to Wasim Maner over at the Maner Group. He is doing a phenomenal job, especially with tech companies and freight brokers in the space. Just hear what one of his customers had to say recently. Check this out.
The quality of the candidates that the Menair Group sent us was a top notch. I don't know specifically, given the amount of time that I have to put into recruiting, I don't know that I could have possibly found, the level of candidate that they were able to send us. They did all the outreach and literally, specifically went after people who were qualified. I don't think I interviewed a single candidate that wasn't totally qualified.
The Menair Group, supply chain and technology recruiting simplified.
All right, so make sure you reach out to him at MenairGroup.com. Follow him on LinkedIn, Wasim Menair. Good guy. He's a golfer as well, so you got to love that as well. All right, Eric, it's time to get back out of here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's get back into the demo. Give me a little break there. Give me a chance to drink some water. Not too bad. All right, let's talk about how this thing actually works. Run us through what this looks like from a user experience.
Absolutely. So again, this is kind of that post ingestion. We've taken in the documentation, whether that be via 210s, APIs, or email PDFs, etc. Now we're here in the application, which is basically the workflow management associated with exceptions. And so at this inbox level, right, couple key things here. You obviously get the ability to filter by user, filter by customer, filter by carrier, filter by type of exception. All of these additional filters, you can save them, you can add tabs, right? This is allowing a user to come in here and automatically become more effective, because it's not just an inbox. It actually allows them to identify what they're working on asynchronously with their other peers and or other team members that are processing these types of exceptions as well.
And this is where AR, AP team members pretty much live. I mean, that's who's really utilizing the platform.
Yep.
AR, AP, CFO type of candidates. Maybe a business owner, if it's a smaller company, might utilize this until they hire somebody for that role type of thing.
Absolutely. And I think a key call out is most of the time this is done in traditional methods. They have one monitor, they have the TMS pulled up in the original order, and another monitor, they have the PDFs and or another solution that has identified or done that OCR process. And then they have probably a few other windows open. And they're literally
constantly kind of doing this all day, just looking back and forth, trying to figure it out.
They literally go record by record, and they're trying to sit there, and maybe it was just flagged as it was a plus or minus, and it fell outside of that $25 threshold. They then have to play detective, where once it's in here, Navix has already told you exactly why this bill is suspended. And in most cases, we can create the automation to reconcile and or solve that dispute. That exception as quickly as possible without a human having to ever look at it. But in some instances, right, it's customer and or tenant dependent, where they choose what they want to stop, and it's configured by those business rules.
Yeah.
So
can you blow your screen up just a little bit more? Is there a way to do a command plus on that and make it just a little bit bigger?
Yep.
There you go. That way we can see those columns just a little bit better. Yeah, there you go.
So,
perfect.
So I'm going to click, the whole point of this is all this data, all of the information living in one place, one screen, allowing users to process bills that much more effectively.
So I'm curious about this. Are you finding that your users are literally just using one screen now? Have they gone away from this, looking at multiple screens? Are they able just to see all the data right in here and just focus on this for the most part?
So we've seen it where they've been primarily able to work specifically just within this one screen. The other screen that we do still allow them to parse out rather than having it in app is the documents themselves. So after we've classified each document, we have each page of that represented, as well as the data there represented in a separate window if they choose. But otherwise, the entire purpose is to put all of the relevant information needed right here on the screen to drive resolution.
So that's the second Navix window with the documents, but basically two Navix windows kind of working simultaneously. Okay.
Yep. And as soon as they move from one bill to the next, right, that second window automatically refreshes with the relevant documents that are associated with that specific bill. Yep.
Okay. Very good. All right. Keep going.
Yeah. So here on the screen, right, give some basic level metadata up top that just kind of helps us hone as to what we are looking at. We then have all the vendor details, from origin, destination, who the carrier was or the vendor was, terms. We can also capture any amount of reference numbers that a tenant of ours would need. Again, this is all highly configurable based off of the specific use cases and the data that is relevant to our tenant. What's most important, though, is over here on the right-hand side, you see, why is this bill here? Why was this bill suspended in the process? And so you see we've called out 4 specific exception types or 4 specific business rules that we identified. And one thing that's important to call out as well is we were able to do this all at once. And a lot of other or current solutions that companies are utilizing do this kind of linearly, right? They maybe identify one variance, but then they resolve that variance, and then they then rerun it through the process. Well, then it gets flagged for something else, right? So then it almost requires a bill to be looked at twice or even 3 times before they can process that bill. So
Navix is able to handle multiple situations at one time, as opposed to just the linear process.
Exactly.
Okay.
So here we see, obviously missing document type. We need a weight and inspection certificate because there was an accessorial that came in on the bill for a reweigh charge. Well, that's a contingent business rule where if we recognize that the bill came in with that type of accessorial, but we identified during that page indexing / classification process that we don't have a weight and inspection certificate, in most cases, this
Did I freeze or did Eric? There you are. Now you're back.
Oh.
Say those last 20 seconds again.
So really what this is doing is this is actually visualizing something that would be automated in most cases. So let's say well,
it looks like we're having trouble with that Minnesota internet up there. We'll see if we get Eric back here in just a minute. Eric, can you hear us? Are you back?
Is it me?
We're seeing it on our end that you're freezing up just a little bit, but you know what? You look good though when you do it. No weird faces yet. Take that down. See if we get it back. Ooh, there's the look right there, everybody. Just in case you're wondering, we'll see if we bring it back. Oh, yep, it's definitely him. Well, we'll wait to get him back here momentarily. Hopefully, he'll be back, and we'll get him back on the show. But that's interesting. So if you haven't checked it out, go to navix.io, and you can schedule a demo to learn more about the product and how it works. And talk to Eric, talk to Travis, talk to the guys up there about getting that done. While we're waiting for them to come back, just a couple of things to talk about for this fall trade show season coming up. I'll be at McLeod. I'll be at Trimble. Going to be at the Broker Carrier Summit and a few other things. And so make sure that if you're hitting the road out there, let me know. We'd love to see you out on the road. Okay, I think we got Eric back. Okay, let's just see. Eric, you back, man? You with us now? There we go. We got you back.
There we go.
I went to show your screen again, and it was not coming up. I'm like, oh, no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't.
All right.
I didn't have any difficulties on my side, so I don't know what.
Uh-oh. Well, this is what happens when you go live, folks. You just never know what's going to happen. We'll see again if we get Eric back here in just a minute back on the screen. But again, if you're going to be out there at any of those events, Broker Carrier Summits in October, that's going to be a great one as well. TI Technovations out in San Diego. And potentially F3, I might be there as well, but look forward to seeing you guys out on the road. And if you're a Navix user and you're watching this, throw in the comments your experience with that. We'd love to hear how it's going with you with using the platform. Always like to highlight the latest in logistics technology. And again, hopefully we get Eric back here in just a minute. Otherwise, you got to listen to me talk for a little bit longer. Just a reminder, make sure you go to our YouTube channel. You can go to Trey Griggs 24, and you'll see all the Beta Podcast Network shows, including The Edge. And so just make sure you check those out as well. Looks like we've lost Eric. His internet might be giving us trouble right now. Shout outs to Bill O'Reilly, Travis. The Bill O'Reilly from Fox News or a different Bill O'Reilly? Let me know. Haven't heard that name in a long time since he left the show. But anyways, we hope to see you guys out there real soon. Plus, I think we might be doing a little bit of a golf event with Wasim and I, looking to do that down in Phoenix. So hopefully we can see you guys down there if you're going to be in Phoenix. That's going to be October 16th, I believe, or 17th. Somewhere around that, we're going to be putting together an event like that as well. Okay, we have lost Eric. His internet is crapping out right now. That's unfortunate. We're just going to have to wait and see. Oh, he's back. Here we go. Let's just see. Do we have him back?
We do. Dude, I have no idea what's going on with
this is what happens when you go live, man. This is it. You just never know. I guess people are just going to have to schedule a demo.
Unfortunately, I'm on my PC too. Otherwise, if I were on my laptop here, I would have been able to hotspot it. But I'm hardwired actually here into my wall. So
I'm hardwired as well. And sometimes it goes out and it drives me crazy. I get so mad at the internet companies when it happens. I don't know why it happens, but that's what it works. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. Can we do just a real quick look if you can get it up again?
Yep,
and
got
then,
it. Pulling up right now.
Then we're going to finish up. So that'll be good. I was just telling everybody about all the stuff that we're going to this fall. So hopefully we'll see people out there on the streets with us this fall. All right, so let's jump back in. What's the best thing you can show in the next 3 or 4 minutes about the platform here?
Yeah, so one, this is what I was trying to cover, right? As this is showing something that would necessarily, in most cases would be automated.
Yeah.
Reway charge came in on the bill. That customer also then, if a reway is obviously applicable, then where's the certificate to back that up? In this case, we would automatically be notifying the carrier if that document type was missing from that classification process at a specified cadence. And again, those are configurable. So it really just depends on tenant by tenant, how we would handle each of those types of exceptions. But in this case, I have it here just to show what it would be identifying, but it would be, imagine this being just automatically notified to the carrier to drive that resolution without a human having to be involved. If I scroll down here below, we obviously capture every one of the line items on the shipment and all of the information that's relevant to the line items of the shipment. But then I think this is where it becomes really important, right? So I could view the documents here. This is what I was talking about, where we have the ability to pop out those documents into a separate window that will then automatically update and or be changing per record that you're reviewing. But in here, this is, I think, the most important part, right? We have the ability here to look at vendor charges side by side with customer charges and how any of these at a line item level would impact the other. The main thing to call out to is we do our math all the same, no matter mode, which allows us to work across multiple different modes, where we're looking at the order data side by side with the vendor bill data. And then if a contract were applicable, what is the audit data associated with that specific, based off of the vendor build details? What would have the audited rate been at a line?
This is where it might find that the accessorial charge discrepancy based upon the contract and what they charged on that particular load.
Exactly. And in this case, it shows that they're all matching, but assume that, we had a reway charge that we originally created on the order that was $20, which I don't know why that would be actually on the order data here, demo data. It's what you gotta love. But assuming here on the vendor, they sent in a $20 reway charge, but you might have had a negotiated rate associated with that inspection or a lift gate or any other type of accessorial for that matter, that the contract would have stated that it should have been a different rate maybe than even what the vendor billed. So one, we know that the vendor was correct, that a reway was assessed. But then per contract, what should that rate have been? And therefore, we have the ability or allow a user to automatically adjust this field to where they have the adjusted column where they're able to look at all of this side by side. They also then, if I adjust a field here, have the ability to select a variance reason as to why this is here. And all this data is tracked and then utilize this insights to drive change upstream and operationally within the brokerage to stop any of these types of discrepancies from occurring again. Once you look at this and you resolve this from a vendor perspective, you then can see how it would also impact at a line item level the customer charges. And you then have the ability to automatically adjust whether this be drawn up per contract again or manually, where I choose to maybe pass on this specific type of new accessorial or change in rate off to my customer, and or is this something that I've worked with the load rep on and this is not something that we're going to pass off to the customer. Therefore, I actually have an ability to track as to why something, in this case, let's say I type this in a 0, it says, maybe I waive this per tariff, maybe incorrect, maybe other, which would be maybe tied to a load rep identified that this is something that they didn't want to bill. As soon as I make any of these changes throughout any of this process, I also have the ability to perform a re-audit. So now we're going out and we're performing a audit back against that rating engine to ensure that, is there, based off of any of the changes or any of the data that I've updated here, is there anything else that would have changed? Which allows us, again, it already tells us what the discrepancy is, and we now know how to resolve that based off of what the platform is telling us. And in most cases, as I said, as a customer works with us, the longer they work with us, the more and more of those steps and or processes they can further automate. And that's leveraging the artificial intelligence aspect, as well as our own team running, trend analysis across the data to help them identify where they might be, let's say losing efficiency, and or where maybe something is getting held up longer for where there's no the juice isn't worth the squeeze associated with stopping something or suspending something tied to that.
So the whole point is to try to get more and more shipments into the automated side of things based upon the user data when they're dealing with those
Exactly.
exceptions. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
And as soon as you hit approve, that pushes all that data back into the TMS for billing and or for payment over here on the right-hand side. And that is not something that we are in doing it currently within our platform. There are plenty of awesome factoring and payment providers, and there are many TMSs that have a very well-honed process for customer invoicing.
Connecting with a lot of those, which is good. Well, I love that. Love to see this software. I don't know if I've actually seen a demo of it in a while. I think we talked about it a while back when you were just getting started.
It might have been almost a year ago, I think, since you've seen the demo.
Well, it was definitely last summer, I know. So we've been at least a year, if not maybe 15 months when that first took place, which is great. All right, so real quick, how can people get started? How can they? What's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, best way to get in touch with us is you can reach out to me or my team directly on LinkedIn. You can go to www.navix.io and you can click book a demo if you choose, or if you want to just learn more or get some additional content. We have a newsletter. Otherwise, we will be at, as I said, TIA Technovations. We'll be at the McLeod User Group Conference exhibiting. We'll also be out at FreightWaves F3, among a number of other events. So we'd be happy to meet up with anyone in person, and we also do some regional road shows. So if we'll reach out, and or if you have any interest in meeting us in person, we'd be happy to make a road show out to your offices.
Hopefully there is a round of golf in our near future, my friend. Glad to have you on the program. Thanks for showing off the platform today. I wish you guys the absolute best in what you're doing, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that today. Yeah,
thanks for the opportunity, Trey. Really appreciate it. And we'll look back and laugh at that little technology hiccup as we all have them in a live environment. But
it takes me right back to my radio days, back when I was doing radio, and you just had to fill time. So we just fill a little time. It all works out just fine. But again, appreciate you, my friend, and everybody that's watching. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you come back next month. We actually have Vendor Flow on with our good friend Eric Rodriguez. So we're gonna have a good time at that on the next show. And we'll talk to you guys real soon out there. Thank you again to our friends over the Monero Group, monerogroup.com. Wasim's a good dude, man. Love that guy. You've worked with him a little bit, I know. So good guy. They're one of the best in the industry, if not the best. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. We'll see you. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
On track, now we gon' way up. W's as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, we pray up. Way up, pray up. On track, now we gon' way up. Now we gon' way up. Now we going. On track, now we gon' way up. Now we gon' way up. Now we going. Keep the same energy. Work on being better when I'm 70. Your drip is just a water spring. I drip different, just the 7 C's. I deal with life different, make that limit squeeze. Went off for my style and I